Aloha and welcome to our video on the kingdom Plantae. Today we will look at the difference between vascular and non-vascular plants, and we will describe the features of two phyla, the Bryophyta and the Polypodiophyta. Alright, when we talk about the kingdom Plantae, we have four phyla that we're going to discuss. The first is the Bryophyta, or the mosses. We also have the Polypodiophyta, or the ferns. We have the Coniferophyta, sometimes called the gymnosperms, and these are going to be our pines, our fir, and our spruce trees. And then we'll have the Anthophyta, or the angiosperms, and these are going to be our flowering plants. So the mosses, the Bryophyta, are going to be non-vascular, and we'll talk about what that means in a few minutes. They're low-growing, they're small, they live in the moist area. They'll produce their spores, they get their water through rhizoids, so they don't really have true roots. And then they have an alternating life cycle of alternating generations. So I'll show you all that in a couple slides. The ferns we'll also talk about a little bit later in the video, and these are our vascular plants. They tend to be a little bit larger. They have big fronds as leaves. On the underside of the fronds they have sori, which produce spores. And a lot of the ferns in past times are what have become our fossil fuels. The Coniferophyta, we'll talk about that one a little bit later on, and then as well as the Anthophyta. So when we hear the term vascular plants, what we're talking about is these vascular bundles, vascular tubes. These are the tube plants, and what they do is they primarily will have two different tubes. One of them is the phloem here, and that one starts up primarily in the leaves, and it takes the food and the energy that it produces in the leaves and transports it down through the plant to the remaining parts of the plant. The other type of vascular tissue we have is the xylem, and the xylem will take water from the roots of the plant and then transport that up to the leaves where it can be used for photosynthesis and for just the plant to have as well. So when we talk about this vascular nature of plants, what we're talking about is, do they have dedicated tissues for transporting this food and water? The first phylum in the plants that we'll discuss is the Bryophyta, or the mosses. Now the Bryophyta has a couple different things I want you to realize. First, it has this split duality to its nature. It'll be a saprophyte plant, okay, which was actually a diploid condition. So that's after we have some fertilization, we have the ability for it to blend the traits together and work that way. In here it goes through the process of meiosis and makes these spores, which are going to be haploid. The spores are then spread out, and those are going to form our gametophyte plants, which are going to be haploid condition, and then those will produce sperms and eggs, and then those will come together for fertilization, and this cycle continues. So this is when we talk about this alternating generation between being haploid and diploid. Now, our mosses, as you can see in the picture here, they tend to be, and here, a little bit lower to the ground. This one's kind of neat because you can see what we generally consider to be the moss part here, the gametophyte, and then we'll see some saprophytes up here coming up on the top. So all in all, this is what it breaks down to. We can see it here. It doesn't really have a true root system. Instead, it uses these things called rhizoids. And then it does have in the gametophyte stage a stem-like structure and then a leaf-like structure. So not true leaves and stems. Because it's not vascularized, this is why they have to stay low. They don't have the ability to transport the materials great distances. And then you can see the sporophyte over here developing above, where we'll have a stalk and a capsule, and in the capsules where we're going to be filled with these spores that will later be released. So those are our basic mosses, and this is the phylum Bryophyta. And in the phylum Polypodiophyta, our ferns, what we notice is here we're starting to see vascularization of tissues. So we start to see the phloem and the xylem. So we can see a larger plant, they get to be a little bit bigger. And what we'll notice is when we look at the adult plant over here, that it's going to be a diploid stage. Okay, so it'll come through some process of fertilization, which we can see here, and then it'll kind of grow out from that way. Now, our mature sporophyte, you can see it has the frond leaves here. On the other side, it has the sori where it produces the spores. Okay, and then we'll see the sporangium here. It goes through meiosis, and then it releases these spores out, and the spores are going to be a haploid again. The haploid spores grow into a young gametophyte. The gametophyte will mature, and from there, what it'll do is it'll form this antherid and this archegonium, and this is where we form our sperm, and then we'll form the egg, and we get our fertilization, and the process continues. Now, with the ferns, because it's vascularized, they're able to get a lot bigger. They can transport water throughout their entire being. So from the roots, it can take that water up to the leaves or to the fronds, but also the energy that it makes in the fronds through photosynthesis, it's able to transport that down through the rest of the plant as well. Okay, so that's it for our brief introduction into the plant kingdom. We'll pick it up a little bit more in our next video. Good luck in the lessons, and as always, we'll see you in the next video.